The rule I break is that there are rules.
I am a rule breaker.
I love my rule breaking.
My rule is to not give in to that.
I like rules in general. Rules are kind of cool.
That might be controversial.
Ooh. Maybe it might not be a rule.
I don't know if this is breaking a rule.
I don't believe that anyone can tell you.
All right, this is a bonus episode of the Story Series podcast. Every 10 episodes, I stop and do one of these. We revisit the question I've asked the previous 10 guests. What's a rule in your industry that you don't follow or believe in? And honestly, it's become one of my favorite parts of the show because no matter who's sitting across from me, from writer, actor, founder, filmmaker, that question always pulls out something real, raw, and revealing. So this is volume 3, 10 voices, 10 answers, 10 reminders. There's no single way to live a creative life. Here we go.
Well, that's difficult because literally I write a book about pretty much
this is right up your alley.
Breaking all those rules.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the things that I wanted to do is increase productivity and mental health for my design team. So something that was at the time kind of unusual was in bringing in speakers who would either teach meditation, mindfulness meditations, like we would do an offsite. And I brought in a mindfulness meditation teacher named Lisa Kring to actually lead everybody through an internal meditation in the middle of an offsite, which is very unusual. No one had done that at the time. Or I encouraged and helped to finance, through a budget for people to take ceramics classes. So instead of being on their computer, they're doing something different, that would actually allow them to be creative in a different medium.
The rule I break is that there are rules. Because there are so many rules, especially in screenwriting. There's so many screenwriting books and television too. Rules about what you have to do, where you have to be. You're page so-and-so, you have to be so-and-so. Throw all that out. I try to teach when I do teach, and I've had success with people who've had success who've been my students, I try to teach organic storytelling. The rules exist for a reason. They exist because they have a tendency to work. But that's not the same as saying you need to always follow the rules. So every rule should be looked on with skepticism. What is its reason for being there? And the example I would often use is, the act breaks, 3-act structure in films. And at this point, you're supposed to, the first act should always do this, second act should always do that. And I would use Psycho as an example, which is, the end of Act 1 is the protagonist is killed. Now, Psycho's a gigantically successful film, completely influenced horror films, still does. The reason why the protagonist is killed at the end of Act 1 is because Alfred Hitchcock and Joseph Stefano, who wrote it, were trying to make the scariest movie ever made, and they came up with this brilliant idea: what if we killed the protagonist at the end of Act 1, and then the audience would have no idea who's going to survive? Everybody's up for grabs, and they cast a movie star, Janet Leigh, in the role to make it really effective. And it worked great. But if I said to you, if you want to write a horror movie, always kill the protagonist at the end of Act 1, that would be stupid. Likewise, 30 years later, the Coen brothers are doing Fargo, and they say to themselves, it'd be fun. Seems like it would be a fun idea for a movie. We created this kind of crazy, complex, misbegotten crime gone wrong. So complicated. And then suddenly we bring in this small town sheriff who slowly starts to pick apart the clues and figure out what happened. Wouldn't that be fun to watch? Yeah, it would be fun to watch. So because of that, they introduced the protagonist at the end of Act 1. So Act 1 is just crazy, nutty scheme gone wrong. In comes Frances McDormand, and then begins Act 2. Well, likewise, if I said you should always introduce your protagonist at the end of Act 1, that would be crazy, but worked for them. So what is your intent? What is your goal? What is the reason? What are you trying to accomplish with this film? And then make the rules work for you. Throw out the ones that don't work for you. In this case, nobody, Robert McKee's not going to write a rule saying you should always introduce your protagonist at the beginning of Act 2. So that's a rule. I'm going to throw it out. It doesn't work for me, for my intent. I had a screenwriter friend who had a great line. He said, the rules of screenwriting are should be for when the script doesn't work. So you've written the script, it isn't working, go back and look at the rules. Is there a rule I can apply that will make this script work better? as opposed to starting with rules, because if you start with rules, you're just overwhelmed.
You have 3 words, right? That you say are the most important in every.
What happens next?
Yes.
That's
yes. That's the structure.
Yeah.
If you're asking, if
If
you're
the
asking
audience is going, what happens next?
what's going to happen next?
It doesn't matter. You got it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
And usually, I write organically. I do know what the end of Act 1 is. I do know what the end of Act 2 is. I rarely think about the midpoint, but it's always there. And even before that first script that I wrote, that first screenplay that I wrote, before I'd taken any classes or barely had taken any, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going on instinct. And I did 1,000 rewrites of it, but the structure was always there. I always had 3 acts. I just didn't know what they were. It was a midpoint, didn't know what it was. I was just doing what felt right, which is what creative people do. They follow their feelings.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting contrast, because when you years ago went to the downtown library in Birmingham, you got one book on television writing, and it was, you probably had to dust it off, you know, and it was a little technical and this and that. Now there's a genre of screenwriting books. Is there something where, you know, it has to feed an industry where if we're saying that there are rules to screenwriting, then that must mean you need books to learn what those rules are, right? Like, did you ever talk about rules in storytelling back in those sitcom days?
No. I mean, no. We knew generally what we were.
Were there ever any books around of like?
There may have been, but nobody read them.
Yeah.
We all knew it was going to be 22 minutes. We knew that the script had to be roughly 45 pages. We knew that there was a commercial break in the middle, which we called Act 1, Act 2. And therefore that commercial break meant that the end of Act 1 had to be a cliffhanger to keep people to come back from the commercial break.
Yeah.
This is back when people watch commercials.
Yeah.
But
So
that
you
was
had to write to the commercial.
But that was it. I mean, other than that, you're just trying to tell a good story. And I noticed, you know, if every writer's room I'm in, I noticed that with the one word you probably hear more than any other is feel. That doesn't feel right. No, it feels like that's too soon. You know, I think it feels like it would be more effective if we learned that later. We're going by instinct, by feel. Yes, there's a structure, but that's not, if you're writing to the structure, you're dead.
I don't believe that anyone can tell you what you are or who you are. Like, if someone says, you're not a showrunner, don't believe them. If someone says, you're not really a writer, don't listen to them. If you feel like you have something to say, say it. If you get a no on a show, but you really love it, turn it into a comic. Don't give up on it just because someone else said no. Like, these people who are in these positions and who can be completely lovely and great to work with and everything like that, but don't let them rule your life and how you feel about yourself.
That's something that you mentioned earlier about being a little impatient and just doing things.
Yeah.
Not waiting for people.
I'm very impatient.
Yes.
And I have to wait so much in this industry.
I mean, part of like starting a podcast is just like to do something myself,
Yeah.
have control over it, put it out every week, and just
Totally.
do the thing. And I feel like there's obviously, you view your career as very much like that too. And sometimes we have to wait and we don't have control over when someone's going to get
You have
back
to
to
wait
us.
so long.
Right.
It's crazy.
And so you just have to
Yeah.
be doing multiple things just to offset that waiting.
Yeah.
Because we don't wait well. You don't wait well. I don't wait, you know.
And it almost seems like we're in the wrong industry, like, because it's the most unsure, you know, like unpredictable
Yeah.
sort of industry.
Yeah.
But I see a light at the end of the tunnel, which is that it's actually a great time to be a creator,
And why do you feel that way?
because I see the current situation as creating like more of an equal playing field for creators and big studios than ever before. Because, for example, Flow, was very much an independent feature.
Mm.
It was basically made by one guy with help and lots of funding, independent funding.
Yeah.
And it won Best Animated Feature. And that person didn't have to wait for Disney or Pixar or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with all these successful YouTube creators that just did their own thing and they're doing great. And I think like people don't understand how much audiences or people value the individual and the individual voice. And I think that nowadays, like kids and teenagers are more interested in like what their favorite influencer has to say than like a studio announcing that it's what their upcoming schedule is or whatever.
Yes.
So I think like we have power in ourselves and our independent voices that, you know, are just as valid as whatever these big players put out.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And I think that they understand that to a degree, like because they always want to put the creator front and center
Say
of
they
whatever
do.
show,
Yeah.
you know, but of course it's not exactly the same. It's not
Yeah.
one-to-one, but there is, I mean,
Yeah.
that person who represents the project, that singular voice or where it comes from is very
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
and very interesting to people too. You know, and anytime someone talks about why they did something, it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really well said.
And by the way, I was very supported at Apple. Like I loved my executives and they totally supported my vision.
Well, I mean, number one, like I don't read specs. That's a rule that I guess I break. It's sort of a rule. Yeah, I can't think of. I mean, I like rules in general. Rules are kind of cool because they keep you on a path.
Mm-hmm.
If you go with your gut, though, you know which rules just need to be broken just because you're in that moment and you're like, well, that's not going to work for the story. You have to break that rule.
In writing, I tend to be a little bit more conversational than than I probably should. And a lot of some of the edits were trying to like bring that back, dial that back a little bit, but how my kind of like style, which I think maybe is like what the authenticity part is. And I think people, from when we were younger and how we consume books and now that we consume conversation also via over text, I think like our minds have like shifted a little bit. And I definitely think authenticity is something now that's more important with all of the stuff going on in the world and us having access, you know, to a whole lot of different information about people where you realize and you can figure out if people are actually who they are. And so I think part of at least what I was taught when I was younger about how, you know, to write and how to do this and, you know, then going in through school, you know, was to structure things a certain way, but I tend to be a little bit more conversational. And so that's kind of one, even in with like a self-help memoir where you probably, you know, should be laying out your points and thoughts and all this. But, you know, that's one kind of aspect where maybe it might not be a rule, but like I stray away from you know, a more traditional way of writing, if there is, you know, kind of one.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is your own voice in the book.
Yeah.
Which is like, don't edit it down to where you lose yourself.
Talking directly to the creator is something like most companies don't want their agency manager to do because I'm supposed to only talk to the creator network owners. But I do actually talk to the creators because I want to know like what kind of person they are, or if they have any concerns for the creator network, or how they have suggestions for the network or for the company. So yeah, I really like to actually connect to real people rather than just like talk generally to the owners.
I see, because sometimes the owner is like a wall.
Yeah.
And you want to talk to the creator because they're the ones
Yeah.
at the center of it.
I don't agree with the amount of nepotism that I see. That might be controversial. I don't agree with Hollywood having to be a party culture to make it and get to the next level.
Those are good.
Yeah, for me, you see people, especially when the folks are relatives of folks, you know, like some A-list actors retiring, he's on his way out, she's on her way out, and their kids are getting the next, right? Good for them that their family was able to do that for them. But when I hear the nepotist baby, the Nepo baby, as they call them, complain or talk about how hard the struggle was to make it for them, I just want to lose my mind sometimes. I'm like, you have no idea sharing a Chipotle burrito with a family of 5. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I have to curb my jealousy and my anger towards that, because I'm like, you have the opportunity, like someone gave you this opportunity to help other people. I'm not asking for me necessarily, which would be great. But it's take what you've been given with grace and honor and then make the most of it. Also, there's just kind of this weird underbelly of the party scene with LA where you got to go do these parties and you got to hang out with seedy people that you don't have anything in common with. I said no to that a long time ago, thank God. I'm a very self-destructive personality, so being married and having kids was the best thing for me ever. And going down that party route would not have been anything good for me, for my marriage, for my kids, my soul. So I wish that there was less nepotism. I don't even know how to stop something like that.
I am a rule breaker. That's for sure. I'll tell you the rule that I broke all the time, not just some of the time, but all the time. When so again, on the sales side, if you will, when I was an engineer for a software company, and we would maybe have people from the company out playing golf, or we go here, or we go to dinner, or things like that. I never talked business. I wouldn't allow them to talk business during those times. That's what you're supposed to do. That's why the company, I could get in trouble for this. That's why the company is paying for the dinner or for the golf event, right? But I wanted them to relax and have a good time. Let's talk about your kids. Let's talk about, how, doing well in school, how did you grow up? What made you getting into this field? I tried to learn more about the people during those times and not stress them out for so I need to, build this software solution for this application that's going to go out to this customer. I didn't want to do that. So I broke that rule all the time.
But that speaks to playing the longer game where you're strengthening bonds between people, which would then make for better employee relations in that right context.
Absolutely.
But in this short-term context, you're not talking business, but it's still for the betterment of the company. But it goes back to that personal connection again that keeps coming up with you.
So if I had to explain it to my boss, that's what I would say.
I don't know if this is breaking a rule. This is more about approach. Again, like earlier, I tend to think about players at the table. And so I personally am less interested in rules, in the crunch of rules about how far can you see into the distance? There are rules about how far you can see in D&D. And I'm like, I don't care. I want to know my whole thing, and Adam's heard me say this a million times. So Adam, if you're listening, here you go again. D&D role-playing games are memory-making games. That is what they do, in my opinion. And so if there's a rule that's getting in the way, and I know that you can always house rule things. Nobody's going to come to your door if you're not playing the rule correctly and bother you about it. But I tend to think, even as a designer, make this easy to make memories at the table. That's what I like. Players want to feel smart, and they want memorable stuff to happen. And if you can do those two things, that you've succeeded at a role-playing game, in my opinion. Some system, and again, RPG systems, I love them from. There's an intellectual pursuit that I love about reading new RPG systems, but it's often the same metaphor. RPGs, you are an adventurer doing a thing with your set of skills and your inventory. Are you rolling D20s, D12s, D8s? Whatever you like doing, do that thing.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just like, the rules system is less important to me than the ability to make memories.
That's beautifully put, because we're getting so deep as writers, we do in what we're creating. But the end result is what? It's a group of friends sitting around a table having a badass time together.
Yep.
I mean, the last time you and I played was probably what, like 15 20 years
ago.
ago? It's crazy.
At least,
Yeah. But those memories are awesome.
How many times do we talk to people who have played D&D and they don't say, do you remember the time my character or our characters, they say, do you remember the time we took on that demon lord or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah. We didn't do anything.
Right.
We sat around a table and talked about people doing that.
Right.
But the memories are so powerful because we did it together.
Yes.
And there's something so just rewarding about that. That's what lingers. That you take that on as this is something I did.
I think right now there's a lot of despair in our industry because we've gone through some really rough years. COVID, the writer's strike, and AI. There's a lot of scary things that could potentially come of this industry, and I've seen it and I've witnessed it. With voiceover work, for example, like AI, taking over in that area. Yes.
I guess I have heard of some celebrity voices being generated, but that's a real concern.
Yes. But my rule is to not give into that. I really believe now more than ever, which I used to take this for granted a lot, but now more than ever, I believe life is art is life-saving. And I think we need art now more than ever. So AI can't do ever what a human does. So I think we need that, whether it be a concert or a show or a theater or a poem or whatever, to reflect our experiences back to us is needed now more than ever. And it makes me feel alive. And so I need art. AI doesn't do it for me. So I would say not giving into despair.
I love that. Not to give into despair. Art is life-saving.
I think art is life-saving.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. It's kind of like internalizing that. Yeah.
Yeah,
because
really
I think something.
And to not minimize, it can be a silly movie or a silly show or whatever that you can, whatever, that's stupid. But like, man, laughter and joy are so important. They're so important, and to not minimize the importance of those things, especially now when things are tough in the world. I think for some people, and especially during COVID, people were really lonely. And I think art, TV, film gave them connection and community even through a screen. So to not minimize the power of that.
And at what point in your life did you come upon that nugget of wisdom about art as life-saving?
With Judy Garland.
With Judy Garland.
With Judy Garland. It was validating to see someone having deep, uncomfortable feelings like me and to feel seen, and that I'm not a crazy person, that we all, it's the human condition. We're all going through stuff all the time, and to sort of normalize that a little bit more.
Hey, before you go, thank you for listening. If something in this episode moved you or even made you pause for a second, please consider following the show, leaving a review, and signing up for the weekly newsletter at storyseriesPodcast.com. That's where I share my personal takeaways from each episode, what stuck with me and why, one story at a time. See you in the next one.